Okay, sorry about that. This is going to be video 5 because for some reason our video 4 just ended on me, so I'm not quite sure which has happened. My apologies. Um, but we were talking about the breathing, diaphragmatic breathing, and it kicking in the parasympathetic, okay? The other exercise that we can do to help our young people with their bodies following trauma is grounding exercises, okay? There are certain things that we want to do to help the child with two different types of regulation. We're going to talk about down regulation and up regulation, okay? Regulation, where we are regulating our physiological responses, our emotional responses, all of that. This is a really important skill for our kids following trauma, for them to learn how to do, okay? So let's start with the down regulation. This means that you've got a kid who's bouncing all over, who can't be still, they're anxious, they're responding to trauma with acting out. So they're acting out. Some of these kids have extremely high energy, and the teacher's trying to get them to calm down. Caregivers are trying to calm them down. So this kid, you want to be able to have things that are going to be calming, okay? Grounding with some piece of fabric, like a velvet type of fabric that they can have and they can feel, okay? While they're breathing, and they can feel this fabric. Other things, they can have little stress balls, or like clay, or something that they're working with in their hands, okay? For your older kids, your middle age to older kids, you can also do a grounding exercise where you have them sit, they're sitting, and you can have them, tell them that, to close their eyes, and now just picture themselves sitting on the couch. Okay, so maybe they're sitting on a chair or couch, and then have them press their feet into the floor and say, just notice your feet now on the floor. Have them close their eyes, say, can you feel the pressure? Can you feel your feet on the floor? And so they'll try to get there, and you just encourage them and coach them. Just notice that. Once they say, yes, I can feel my feet on the floor, then you just direct them and say, okay, just notice that. Notice your feet on the floor. You can also do it if they're standing or sitting with their hands up pressed on a desk or on a wall. The idea is to get them to put all of their focus, all their mind and focus on what they're feeling, because now their physiological response that was activated before cannot compete now with another sensation, okay? Does that make sense? So what I'm doing right now is I'm pressing into this board, and I will have them close their eyes because it's easier for them to focus. If their eyes are open, they may be looking around and getting distracted by visual stimuli. So have them close their eyes. They feel the board, maybe put both hands on their desk or on the board. Now just notice that. Can you notice how that feels? Okay, and maybe direct them a little further. Can you feel the coolness of that board? Okay, you might even want to do this with them holding a rock or something that's cool. Just notice that. Can you feel the coolness of that? And you may even ask them to describe that to me, okay? So what you're doing is you're helping them divert their attention away from what was this awful feeling in their body onto something else, okay? And when we are talking physical sensation, that is enough to interrupt and interfere with the activated sympathetic nervous system. Does that make sense? We can't just say, okay, now just stop thinking about it. That does not work. You've got to have something else, physical stimulation, that's going to compete and actually overpower that activated sympathetic nervous system. And now you can see why teaching a child or a young person this from the time they're young, and as they get very good at this skill, this is actually going to help them as they grow older. And then when they're triggered, they can immediately go to the grounding exercise, or they can go to this deep breathing exercise and be able to reduce the physiological response. Now, what is upregulation? Upregulation is the opposite of downregulation, okay? So it's the kid who maybe they're sitting over in the corner, maybe they are completely detached. Remember I explained to you that there are two different ways that a child will respond, and even an adult. They either go outward with all of it or they go inward with it. Okay, so when the kid who goes outward with it, we're talking we need down regulation for them, teaching them to calm down, bringing them down, right? But the kid who is gone inward and is just basically inside of that shell, and this is a lot of kids who have experienced trauma, severe trauma, they will just lock away inside. So we want to get them activated. We want to connect them with the world. We want to connect them with experience. We want to connect them with feelings. So that's our goal for this child. So that will again look like, physical, tactile. We want tactile touch, experiencing different things with touch. Putty, different sensations, things that are cold, things that are warm, getting them activated this way, engaged in, we might do some jump rope and pretend, we're doing jump rope, or, interacting that way. Again, going back to the bubble blowing, experiencing that, feel that air as you're blowing out. Finger painting, feeling it, feeling the finger, feeling the paint. How is that feeling in your hands, okay? So we want some experiential activities for these children where they are able to get themselves regulated, but where they're connecting with the world, where they're engaging. So when you're talking about a kid here, we're looking at getting them engaged with the experience, okay? Okay, so let's finish off with our last one here, which is our spiritual and faith, okay? But one last word before we move on about the physical and the physiological. Again, remember, this takes patience, it takes work, it takes practice. I have never met one person, not a child nor adult, who has been able to just nail this skill overnight. This takes work, and it takes commitment, and it's going to take your encouragement for that child, and practicing with them, teaching them, practicing with them, and being patient with the process. And that kid, that child may want to give up, but it's your connection, remember, it's your connection, your relationship with that young person that's going to encourage them, and it's going to lead them to trust you that this is going to work. This is going to work, okay? Help them celebrate the small little victories along the way. Help them recognize that, they're better today than they were, yesterday or a week ago. Help them see the improvement. Celebrate those little baby steps. Encourage them. They're going to need a lot of cheering on from you. They're going to need a lot of encouragement, positive reinforcement from you as they do this, because this one right here is going to be the one of the most challenging, because the physical sensations within the body are so powerful, and they're going to want to give into that negative physiological response that's going to cause them to freeze or be in the fight or flight. So for us to disrupt that is going to take practice, all right? And just like anything else, you can help them understand that learning how to, their language, learning mathematics, learning how to spell, those things take practice. And so you can just incorporate this as though it's, it's like another subject that you're learning at school. You can learn it, and you can get good at it, okay? Okay, so lastly is the spiritual and the faith component that, like I said, I really like to cover, because when trauma happens, when a kid is traumatized, when anyone is traumatized, oftentimes, and I've seen this so many times over the years with adults and kids, where God becomes the bad guy, okay? Why is that? Well, as I alluded to in our previous video, there's got to be somebody to blame. And when something is so terrible and things are so unfair and unjust, and especially if you have a child who's still not really got that, you know, life is not fair and things happen in this world that are awful and terrible and aren't fair, they're still kind of grappling with those kind of things. And so they're really trying to make sense of who would allow these things to happen. Well, again, going back to where the child is in their developmental process. So clearly, if you have a kid who is mid-childhood, older, teenage years, young teens, you can have more of a rational discussion with them and validating their feelings about their anger and how could God, if God is loving and good, allow these types of things to happen. It can get into some theological discussion. I try to avoid that because I'm not a theologian, first of all. But my aim is also really to appeal to their heart and a matter of the heart and helping them to understand that, yes, it's when terrible things happen, it is natural for us to want to be upset at somebody, to put the blame somewhere. And they're not a horrible person if they're upset at God. Again, go back to what I was sharing last video about the unconditional love or unconditional positive regard. That means we're not in a position of judging them for experiencing this or making them feel awful and terrible that they're feeling this way. To show them that compassion and to show them that understanding, it is very, very important for them to feel like they can open their heart up to us. They can trust us. And remember, it's God's final work. I mean, He is at work. And I will tell you honestly, when it comes to this area, this is where I really am in prayer. I will be in prayer even in that moment, not necessarily with them, but I will be praying, I'll be attitude of prayer within my heart. Because see, we need God's wisdom. We need God's wisdom because this one right here is so important for the individual in their own experience to have a relationship with God, to have a relationship with the Lord. And I have met people, like I shared with you before about the young boy who was abused terribly by his father, who had said he was a person of faith, but clearly he wasn't. He did these terrible things to his son. And then we go to church on Sunday. Well, the son at 9 or 10 years old determines he's an atheist. Well, he really doesn't even quite understand what all of that means, but all he knows is he wants nothing to do with God because God allowed this to happen. So in order for me to have any sort of place whatsoever in terms of trust, I have to have a relationship with this young boy, and I have to be able to have active listening, listen to him from my heart, not judging him, having that unconditional positive regard, not making him feel bad or terrible about his experience and how he's feeling. Really being authentic and saying, I can imagine how you would feel that way. Now, does it mean that we're in agreement with what they're feeling? No, not at all. What we are in agreement with is their experience and how they have come to that place and experiencing that. But here's the bottom line, folks. You will establish or reestablish God's love and His kindness through your lives. You are going to be showing the love of God to these young people, and I'm sure that you already have been. But you're the key. You are that person. You are the instrument in God's hand. You are the instrument that He is using to bring healing and wholeness to these children, and not just to their minds and to their emotions and their heart and to their body, but to their spiritual lives, to their spirits. God has put you in a unique position to be in a place where you get to demonstrate God's love and his goodness. And again, remember, what have I asked you to do? What is the key here? In all of these areas, when we are working with people of trauma, children from trauma, we need to be patient. We need to be patient. We're in it for the long haul, right? We're in it for the long haul, and just because you're not seeing something happen overnight, you continue at it, you continue praying, you continue working with these different areas and these skills, and especially in this place of spirituality and faith. And as you build that relationship, and as that child or that young person trusts you, I promise you, they will begin to open their heart up, and they will converse with you. They will converse with you. And you can sit and have very good conversation and important conversation with them. You can have that conversation that, I understand what you're going through, and that makes sense why you would feel that way. And you may even have opportunity to share certain experiences with them as they're older. I've been able to do that. I've been able to share with my, you're shaking the table. I'm sorry, but somebody was shaking my table, so my camera is shaking. But you'll be able to share with these young people your own experience and how God has shown himself to you. But remember, you got to have the fruit. You've got to show that you are the embodiment of God's love and his kindness and his goodness and his gentleness and faithfulness. You want that to be evident in your life, and then they're going to open their hearts and trust you to have those conversations, okay? So that's the number one key, and most of all what I can share with you here. And as God opens the door and you begin to share truth with them, you will be able to demonstrate God the Father, Heavenly Father's love is perfect. Maybe they didn't have a loving parent or a loving father, but their Heavenly Father is not like their earthly father. He is compassionate. He has unconditional love. He loves us no matter what, no matter what. When we're bad, when we make bad choices, God's love never changes. But in order for you to have that conversation, they need to be able to see fruit in your life and that demonstration. And so pray for that opportunity. Pray that the Lord would give you the opportunity, and pray for their hearts. Pray for these children's hearts, that the Lord would really just work their hearts and get their hearts ready, and that God would give you wisdom to have that right timing, to have specific conversations where the Lord is going to be able to, to really heal in the area of their faith. And maybe they've never even ever had that experience to know God, to know Christ, to know his love. This is that great opportunity that's going to come through what you all are doing. So I'm going to conclude with that today, and I know that we kind of went through this pretty quickly. There's so much more I have for you that I would love to follow up, and I definitely want to see all of you and meet you in person. I just want to say God bless you. May he bless you in this coming year as you are working with these young children. And what a privilege and a blessing it is that you have to pour into these young people's lives. So until we meet face to face, the Lord be with you. May he strengthen you and encourage you as you go forward in what you're doing with these kids. God bless you.